Glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Panhchakpor, and I'm here to tell you about a fear that is more common than the fear of death. It was really happening. I was so aware of all the pauses in my speech because I was taught that silence is an attention grabber in public speaking. But every pause seemed like the biggest risk because I could have broken down anytime. It's okay, just imagine the audience naked. But what happened to all the hours of practice? Why am I still nervous? I was 13, competing on a stage of a huge auditorium filled with parents and students who knew me as the girl who had the highest average grade in school and who expected me to be good at everything. And there I was, trying to keep myself together while facing my biggest fear and trying to keep up this facade of a perfect student. I am terrified of public speaking. Welcome to my TEDx talk. Since I was really young, until about 12 years old, the thought of interacting with new people, raising my hand up in class, or something as simple as asking others for where the bathroom is would make my stomach crunch. So I would just avoid talking to others or in public if I could, and I knew my parents would do it for me anyways. During every parents and teachers conference, my teachers would tell them, "You have a smart daughter, but she's too quiet. She needs to speak up more." For years, I got comfortable proving my worth through my academic grades, thinking that it could compensate for my inability to talk. As I started middle school, I realized that public speaking is a necessary skill for my future, and at some point, I would need to overcome it anyways. Just that thought makes me shiver. At one point, my parents even begged me to speak up. They signed me up for a public speaking course without me knowing until they dropped me off that night. I also felt pressured by my peers and teachers to try out at my school's annual speech competition because they said I had potential. Well, there goes my BNA student is good enough. The first topic that came to mind was the fear of public speaking. The irony of it excited me, but the scary part was bigger. So wait, now I actually plan to overcome my fear of public speaking by talking about how to overcome it? I was scared to speak in public because I did not have the skills to do so. It was not the same thing as do the mock quizzes and you'll get an A. It wasn't something that I was used to, and therefore, ultimately, I thought that I was not good at it, and it's just not my thing. For my first ever speech competition in 7th grade, my mother would film me every night before going to bed to help me see my progress. A couple of days later, my coach would take me to a local cafe and made me deliver my speech in the middle of the crowd. I was going from a safe space in my bedroom to talking in front of strangers. At this part of my journey, I realized that it was the skills that I did not have that made me scared. So I realized my fear had to do with readiness. If I felt like I was good at something, I would do it without a doubt. For example, baking has always been something I do as a hobby, and I'm considered to be good at it. It makes me and other people happy. But if I'm baking for a very important person and feel like it's not good enough or I'm not ready to give it to them, then in such situations, I tend to limit myself behind an imaginary line that is too scary to cross. Today, I realize that when I feel scared of something, I tell myself to challenge it by asking if the skills necessary to complete it are learnable. More often than not, they are. Once I have established that it is not impossible to overcome, then it becomes a tiny bit less scary. At the end of the day, the fear is still there, but at least I was learning a new skill. Public speaking-wise, at this stage of my journey, I learned the hard skills of giving presentations, tone of voice, and just to put myself out there. I thought that my fear of public speaking was who I was until I realized it is a skill that can be learned. Taking you back with me, it came to the final 2 candidates of my school's annual speech competition. I was standing next to a person who has won the same competition for multiple years, and there I was, still in shock that I made it this far, ready to accept the 2nd place with great pleasure as I knew it would be a stretch to win. My insides were turning, my fingers tangled, and suddenly I heard my name announced as the champion. and I believe my stomach never dropped that much before as I bursted out crying in disbelief. Though that was just the beginning. In 2019, I was introduced to competitive debating when my school hosted a competition with other schools in the region. One normal training day, we were sitting in our usual classroom, and the teacher called out a few names who were asked to stay back. My name was eventually called, and suddenly I found myself standing amongst 10 other classmates about to be interviewed for the first ever Cambodian national team to compete in the world's biggest international debate championship in 2 months. The next thing I knew, it was the night before our first day of competition, and our coach invited other national teams to a hotel room in Bangkok to do a few rounds of spar debates. And I started to panic and said, I'm not ready, as I looked at my teammates before I rushed to the bathroom and locked myself in there for a few minutes, feeling inadequate, but moreover, embarrassed. But once I started to spar, I realized that our team did have great arguments. Maybe not strong enough to win our opponents yet due to lack of experience, but we were on the right track. Just before our flight to our next competition, standing in the middle of the airport, my team and I asked our coach to tell each of us our strengths and weaknesses. When it came to my strengths, he said that I had the ability to lead my team, but I did not. Because for my weakness, he said, you don't believe in yourself enough. I watched you guys in prep time 3 times. She's got it, but she's not sure of herself. So listen to her, help her, follow her. I was taken aback. The crunch in my stomach just at the thought of our opponents receiving another unanimous win rushed in. But soon came an even bigger sense of relief as I realized that throughout those 2 intense weeks of debating from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, all that I focused on was how I could not possibly be a good debater because I was scared, I stuttered, and I was that girl who couldn't prepare a speech even if I were given the time to, let alone persuasive impromptus. At this stage of my journey, I realized that I was not afraid to stand in front of a huge audience and talk anymore. My fear of public speaking became more of a fear that we will lose the next debate, that my arguments are not persuasive enough, self-doubt of letting the team down, the terror of not being good enough. Today, when I feel scared of something, I often reflect back on the moment at the middle of the airport when my coach told me, you don't believe in yourself enough. And so I ask myself, is it really the task, the competition, the project that is scary, or am I scared of not being good enough? Am I trying to prove anything to anyone? Am I scared of being judged? It might seem insignificant to you, but that statement from my coach is still one of the most transforming moments of my public speaking and possibly self-development journey. Instead of, what if I will fail? I imagine, what if I actually succeed? Sometimes, what most of us fear is not the task itself, but the idea that failing is a possibility. Failure is indeed scary, but is a possibility, not a fixed outcome. There's also the possibility of succeeding, and that in itself can lead to many more dreams we didn't know existed. Overcoming my fear of public speaking has been an ongoing wall climb out of my comfort zone. Up to today, it's been about 2 years since I graduated high school, up to which all the public speaking obstacle courses were there for me to overcome. But after that, I realized that it's now up to me to decide where I take this newfound courage, and that maybe I even developed the fear of the unknown. I might even be possibly afraid of the possibility of succeeding because that means bigger challenges are awaiting. Today, I realized that whenever there's something new, events, panels, competitions that would allow me to do public speaking, my instincts tells me to go for it. Instead of having fear as the initial reaction, I have learned to see it as an opportunity. But then the fear comes back in so many more forms, such as fear of judgment, disappointment, failure, perfectionism. All those fears form that familiar, uncomfortable gut feeling I had when I was younger, about to raise my hand up in class to answer a simple question. It was not public speaking that scared me anymore, but whether my ideas are worth sharing. Applying to this TEDx talk should have come easy, right? I mean, a 3-minute video should be fine. Right before midnight, after clicking Submit Application, instead of relief, rushed in echoes of, "It's not good enough. You are not good enough." Preparing for this speech allowed me to go over old videos, and I came across an interesting message. In my 8th grade speech, I left a little message in a bottle. Imagine I have it with me right now, which said, "Do not fear the fear of public speaking." At that time, I thought that was so cool, how it rolls off the tongue, how easy it is to do. Little did I know that not fearing is not possible. So I've learned to give myself permission to feel fear and use it to my advantage. All that I have mentioned above have one thing in common. The opportunities were there for me to take. And this made me realize that opportunities do not come by every day or when I want them to, because I feel ready. So when such opportunities come, I often reflect back on my experience and assess if I have the skills to tackle it. If not, then I can learn and improve on what it takes to do this task well. Only then can I feel readier and have just enough courage to take that leap. Today, I often reflect back on how far I have come with public speaking and how many doors it has opened for me. When realizing that when I feel fear, it's because I'm just about to take that leap. And allowing myself to feel scared is a good sign that I care about it. Putting it this way allows me to relieve the anxiety of making mistakes and just to go for it and let the journey take me instead of trying to control what I cannot. At the end of the day, I did make that scary decision. And before I realize it, I'm one step ahead of overcoming my fear. There are no specific steps or stages to overcoming any fear. It can take many forms, both passive and active. But if every day I can do something that can help alleviate my fears little by little, there are still steps. And the goal is not to kill fear, because we cannot eliminate something that will always exist. Instead, we can take it as a sign and an opportunity to learn and grow. So, to my 13-year-old self who thought that tackling glossophobia heads-on in a speech competition would make it go away, it didn't work. But it did allow me to take those little steps and big leaps that has allowed me to come to this red dot tonight, which has been an incredible milestone and still an ongoing journey, which has been a great pleasure to have you with me. Thank you.